You've probably been told something is wrong with you, that you're too quiet, too distant, maybe even antisocial. But what if that's not true? What if the reason you prefer being alone isn't because you're broken, but because your mind works differently than most people? Here's the part nobody tells you. The people who enjoy being alone the most are often the ones who see the world the clearest. You're not avoiding people, you're avoiding noise. And somewhere along the way, you realize something most people never do, that constant connection doesn't always mean real connection. So the real question isn't, why are you alone? It's, what have you started noticing that others haven't? Because the answer to that might be your greatest advantage. At some point, something shifted. You didn't announce it, you didn't plan it. Yeah, but the things that once felt normal started feeling heavy. Conversations that went on for hours but said nothing. Rooms full of people, but somehow no real connection. Laughter that sounded loud but felt empty, and you noticed it. You started leaving earlier, replying less, saying maybe next time, more often than yes. Not because you hate people, but because something inside you quietly said, this isn't it. And here's where it gets confusing. Part of you watches everyone else enjoying it, talking, joking, staying engaged, and you think, why can't I just be like that? But at the same time, when plans get canceled, you feel it. Relief. Not excitement, not joy, relief. Like you just got your energy back. That contradiction, that's the clue. Because what feels like you pulling away is actually your brain trying to protect something. And see, most people think social interaction is simple. Talking, listening, responding. But for you, it's never just that. You're reading tone, noticing pauses, picking up on things people don't say. It's like your mind is running multiple tabs at once, tracking energy, intention, consistency. Now imagine doing that for hours. Of course you feel drained, but here's the part nobody tells you. Not everyone experiences conversations the same way. Some people skim, they float through interactions without going too deep. You don't. You absorb. You take in details most people miss. You process meaning behind words. You feel the weight of interactions, not just the surface of them. So when you step back, it's not avoidance, it's filtration. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine a small version of you standing in front of a crowd. Everyone is talking, laughing, moving around. But instead of hearing one voice, you hear everything. Every tone shift, every forced smile, every inconsistency. While others enjoy the moment, you're processing the entire room. No wonder you get tired. So when you choose distance, you're not rejecting people. You're reducing noise. You're giving your mind space to breathe again. And that changes everything. Because now the question isn't, why am I pulling away? But something much deeper. If your mind is this selective, if it's this aware, then what exactly is it trying to protect? You've probably felt this before and couldn't explain it. You're in the middle of a conversation. People are talking, laughing, jumping from one topic to another. On the surface, everything looks normal, but inside, you feel disconnected. Yet not because you don't understand what's being said, but because none of it feels meaningful. And that's the part that confuses you. Because you don't hate people. You don't even hate talking. You just can't stay interested when it feels empty. You try. You really do. You nod, you respond, you stay present. But something in your mind quietly checks out. And here's the pattern interrupt. You're not bad at socializing. You're just not built for shallow interaction. That's a completely different thing. See, most people are comfortable operating on the surface. They can move from topic to topic, keep things light, keep things flowing, but your brain doesn't work like that. It doesn't want more conversation. It wants better conversation. There's a psychological difference here. Some minds are wired for breadth, quick exchanges, wide networks, a constant stimulation. Others are wired for depth, and depth is slower. It lingers. It asks questions most people don't even think to ask. That's why you don't just hear words. You analyze meaning, you connect patterns, you notice inconsistencies. So when conversations stay on the surface, your brain doesn't get engaged, it gets restless. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine your mind as a deep ocean, calm on the surface, but incredibly rich underneath. Now imagine being forced to stay in the top few inches of water all day. That's what shallow interaction feels like to you. There's so much depth available, but no one is going there. And here's where it gets interesting. The more time you spend in that depth, alone, thinking, reflecting, the harder it becomes to tolerate environments that never go beyond the surface. Yeah, it's not because you think you're better than anyone, but because your brain has already experienced something more meaningful. So when you pull away, it's not rejection, You're not antisocial. You're not uninterested. You're selective about depth. You're choosing conversations that actually stimulate your mind instead of just filling silence. And slowly, without realizing it, your world starts to change. Because once you begin prioritizing depth over noise, you don't just talk differently, you start seeing everything differently. There's something about you that most people don't notice until you point it out. And even then, they don't fully understand how you saw it so quickly. A slight change in someone's tone, a pause that lasts half a second too long, a sentence that doesn't quite match their actions. Others hear it and move on. You don't. Your mind stays there, replaying it, analyzing it, trying to connect it to something bigger. Yo, and here's the frustrating part. You can't always explain how you know something is off. You just know, which makes you question yourself. Am I overthinking this? Am I reading too much into it? But here's the pattern interrupt. You're not overthinking. You're over noticing. That's different. See, your brain has developed something most people never consciously build: pattern recognition. Not because you studied it, not because you trained for it, but because you spent time observing instead of constantly reacting. While others were busy talking, you were watching. While others were distracted, you were processing. And over time, your brain started doing something powerful. It began connecting dots, tiny ones, invisible ones, the kind most people don't even register. So here's the part nobody tells you. People who spend more time alone don't just think more, they see more. Because your mind isn't constantly interrupted by noise, it has the space to notice patterns as they form. It's like your brain is running quietly in the background, tracking behavior, tone, consistency, all at once. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine a simple conversation as a straight line. Most people follow that line from start to finish, but your mind, it branches. It sees where that line came from, where it might lead, and what doesn't align along the way. So while others experience moments, you experience meaning. And that creates something rare: clarity. Not surface level clarity, but deep, uncomfortable, undeniable clarity. And here's where it gets interesting. Clarity doesn't always feel good. What? Because once you see patterns clearly, you can't unsee them. You start noticing when someone isn't being genuine, when effort isn't equal, when words don't match actions. And suddenly, things that used to feel normal start feeling off. That's the cost. Because this level of awareness changes how you relate to people. You don't just listen anymore, you interpret. You don't just connect, you evaluate. And slowly, without realizing it, your circle starts getting smaller. At some point, it stops being a choice. It doesn't feel like, I'd rather be alone today. It starts feeling like, of course I'll be alone. What used to be a preference slowly turns into a pattern. And then, a habit. You stop considering certain plans. You stop replying as quickly. You stop putting yourself in situations that used to feel normal, not because you don't care, but because your mind has learned something. And once your brain learns a pattern, it protects you from repeating it. Here's the part most people don't see. You didn't choose solitude just for peace. You chose it because it felt safe. Safe from draining conversations, safe from mismatched energy, safe from the subtle exhaustion of being around people who don't align. And at first, it feels amazing. Quiet, calm, controlled, no pressure, no unpredictability. But then, something strange happens. It gets too comfortable. And this is where it gets complicated. Because now you're not just protecting your energy, you might be limiting your world. There's a difference, a big one. Protecting your energy means you're aware. Closing yourself off means you've stopped allowing anything in. And the line between those two, it's thinner than you think. You see, your brain is efficient. Once it identifies what drains you, it creates shortcuts. Avoid this. Skip that. Stay here. Less risk, less stress. But here's the pattern interrupt. Less risk also means less growth. Because the same unpredictability your brain avoids is where new connections, new ideas, and new versions of you exist. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine your world as a room with many doors. At first, you tried opening them all. Some led to noise, some to disappointment, some to nothing. So over time, you started closing them, one by one, until eventually, you're left with just a few doors you feel safe opening, maybe even just one. It's peaceful in that room, controlled, predictable, but it's also limited. And here's where it gets interesting. You're not wrong for closing those doors. You're not antisocial. You're not avoiding life. You're responding to what you've learned. But the real question is this: are you choosing which doors to open? Or have you stopped checking if any new ones are worth it? Because if your strength is awareness, your ability to read people, sense patterns, understand depth, then your next step isn't to hide from the world. It's to engage with it intentionally. Not with everyone, not all the time, but with the right people. Because your peace was never meant to isolate you, it was meant to guide you toward better connections. This is the part where everything starts to make sense. All those moments you questioned yourself, all the times you felt different, all the quiet choices you made that nobody else seemed to understand. They weren't signs of something missing, they were signs of something forming. Yeah, because the thing you thought was holding you back is actually the thing that sets you apart. Let's slow this down for a second. Your ability to sit alone without needing constant distraction, that's not loneliness, that's focus. The way your mind naturally reflects, replays, and tries to understand things deeply, that's not overthinking, that's awareness. And that habit you have of watching, noticing, pausing before reacting, that's not hesitation, that's intelligence in motion. Here's the pattern interrupt. You were never falling behind. You were developing differently. And because it didn't look loud or fast or obvious, you assumed it wasn't valuable. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people can't sit with their own thoughts for more than a few minutes. They need noise, distraction, something external to fill the space. Like you don't. And that changes everything. Because solitude, when you understand it, isn't empty. It's space. Space where your thoughts aren't competing, where your attention isn't being pulled in 10 different directions, where you can actually hear yourself think. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine two people standing in a crowded room. One is constantly reacting, talking, responding, moving with the noise. The other steps out, not to escape, but to see clearly. From the outside, it looks like they left the room. But in reality, they gained perspective. That's you. You didn't disconnect from life. You changed your position within it. And from that position, something powerful happens. Clarity. The kind that helps you understand people better, make better decisions, see patterns before they fully form. But this only works when you recognize it. Because if you keep labeling it as a weakness, you'll never use it as a strength. And this is the shift. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, how do I use this? Because the truth most people never realize is this: the world rewards noise, but it's quietly built by people who can think without it. And if you've reached a point where you can be alone, without feeling lost, empty, or desperate for distraction, then you already have something most people are still chasing. You're not behind, you're not broken, you've just been building a skill in silence. And now you're finally starting to see it. If this felt like it was about you, that's not random. Comment awake below.